Hi, Veronica Andrews here. Welcome once again to Off the Shelf Books on Tour. A new book today, very interesting, not an easy read. Under the Red Moon, your third book, Amy?
Yes.
Yes, Amy Kiev?
Kwei.
Kwei, thank you very much. China, basically,
Yeah.
but Korea and Shanghai and New York. A hard book to read because you had to keep track of what was going on. You did an excellent job. Little dibs and dabs of history that I grew up knowing, you wove it together for me so it made some sense. Thank you. Is it cathartic to write such a story that is so much your life?
Yes. This is my newest book. My first book was about Chinese American family called Intrigue in the House of Huang. It's a Chinese family in Chinatown that moved from the Chinatown to the Upper East Side in New York, and she tries to integrate the family into the posh neighborhood. And that's a story about, it's for young adults, and story about Chinese Americans growing up here. Now, the second is my adult book. It's called A Concubine for the Family. And the concubine book was based on a true fact that my grandmother gave my grandfather a concubine for his birthday because they had no son. Of course, you know, having concubines is age-old biblical thing. Abraham had a concubine, and stories like Pride and Prejudice made out very clearly how in the old days
it was quite acceptable.
Yeah, the women don't inherit, and so you have to have
the man,
a male heir, and there's certain customs, and which was put in the book, both books. And then after the characters, however, were not fictional. They call composites of stories I've heard growing up, and so my grandmother did give my grandfather a concubine for his birthday, so that part of it is true. And then after the first book was out, my friends kept saying, "What happened to the daughters?" And, the fact is, the first wife has two daughters. The concubine has two more daughters. So he never had a son. So this is the last recent book, and it's answer to the question of what happened to the daughters. One daughter died during bombing of Hong Kong after the Second World War. And so these are the three daughters, Golden Bell, Silver Bell, and Coral Bell. Coral Bell is much younger because she's from the second daughter from the concubine. But this book, as you could testify, is very, it stands alone.
Oh yeah, while it refers to a life before this.
That's right. So,
and the two books you've written before, I'm sure, were as well done.
Yeah.
I didn't need direction. I picked it up immediately.
Right.
It intrigued me.
Yeah.
And the fact that they lived on both continents.
Yes.
And in a time and place where they really had no status.
No.
And tradition.
Yeah.
Was as heavy on one side of the scale of life as was their desire to be young women in New York City.
Right.
And living
right.
The cultural void had to be horrendous.
And the subtitle for this book is A Chinese Family in Diaspora. And this is the life of many of the American Chinese immigrants here, because China during the last 100 years had sort of non-stop war, First is the foreigners came, introduced Western values, and had the Opium War, and then the communists came. The struggle between the nationalists.
It's a wonder that they got to keep any traditions.
I know.
Because everything got so thrown up in the air, thrown out, reestablished. No, do it this way. I know.
Yes.
But they still maintain their original Chinese beliefs.
Yes, and Kissinger in his book on China mentioned that the Chinese is not really China is in many ways are not demarcation of political territorial differences, but cultural differences. And this China scholar called Lu Xinpai also said that the Chinese is a civilization masquerading as a nation state, because so much of Chinese culture is embedded in these Asian countries. In Japan, they still honor the emperor, and you obey your parents. And in Korea, this veneration for education. These are all basic Confucian concepts.
And there's nothing wrong with them. We should hold on to them, and they should be the last to go.
Right. And in Southeast Asia, all my teacher friends, they love Asian students because they study hard. They are not rebellious. They don't talk back, because the whole basic Confucian idea is that you bring harmony into the society, and you're taught to be humble, to have self-restraint, and it's the whole orientation is not towards me.
Selfness, right.
Independence.
The family,
yes.
Your parents.
Right.
Respect of everything, nature,
right.
family, housing,
yes.
whatever you've been gifted, whatever you have, respect it and be grateful for
That's right. And this is the nature part is a Taoism, or Tao, and this is the harmony between the earth, yourself, and heaven. And and I try to incorporate all these concepts through using colloquialism, using language that makes you feel part of the culture. For instance, you mentioned they would call a scholarly family as a book fragrant family. So what's a book fragrant family? It's you cultivate harmony, you cultivate the intellect, and you teach. And the teaching is much more structured. And it's in this book as well as the first book, the concubine book. Recently, Trump's granddaughter recited some Chinese poetry. It's a 3-character book that's part of the Confucian studies. And that's, it says, nature of man is always good. But if you're not taught, nature will turn bad. So that's a very different orientation from the West. In the West, we think of you're born in sin.
Yeah, I was
and
like
that you need individual redemption. Whereas the Chinese feel that you're born good, but you have to be taught. So teaching is very, very important.
And it's your responsibility as you grow older.
That's right.
To teach the young.
That's right.
But the young in your culture are receptive to being the young in our culture say, what are you talking about?
Well, you know, I was brought up Catholic, so I always try to remember this saying that extreme of a virtue is a vice.
Yep.
I think
Holier than thou usually
that's right.
falls in a
And
pothole.
so I think that the Chinese culture has a lot to give to the Western culture, and the Western culture has a lot to give to the Chinese culture.
Corruption?
Corruption and repression. The old can be very repressive. So I think the young people in China now being westernized, they look for freedom. They look for individual expression, whereas the people in this country are so concentrated on independence and free expression. They could say anything, even though it's false, you know. And
it'll be believed.
And it's me.
Yeah, that's
which
not.
Of course is the extreme of the bad part of it, being so independent and being so individualistic. Whereas in China, you have obligation to your parents. In the old days, it's unthinkable to let your parents go to an old age home. You take care of them.
And you see to it that they eat before you eat.
That's right.
That they're warm before you're warm.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's
and those things are lost.
I see. Yes, and so it's hard to find a balance.
What surprised me was something you said in the book, that we as a culture perceive everybody as Japanese.
Yes.
Never consider Chinese or Korean.
Yes.
And I thought about that, and it's true, we do.
We can tell them apart.
But why, with such a culture that values respect and has an ancient beyond words, why has it always gotten the back seat and a bad rap? It's not a China welcome, China come, China do. We don't mimic.
Yes.
We love the silk, we love the customs, but we don't adopt them.
I think I don't understand it myself. It's for some reason the Americans, I think the Western world fear China.
Well, yeah, we're almost brainwashed.
Yeah, they always feel that the Chinese and the Japanese are the same. Whereas the Chinese culture has never been aggressive. Like, we suffered a lot during the Second World War underneath the Japanese.
You keep on getting attacked. I didn't see that you attacked anybody.
The thing is that that's it. The only time the Chinese went out and conquered was during the Han Dynasty. That's like 200 or 300 BC. But they went out and pacified the western provinces and established the Silk Road. The Chinese always wanted to trade. And how China got Tibet, for instance, was because the Manchu and Genghis Khan came down and conquered China, went all the way to the borders of India. And that's how Tibet became part of China. And Genghis Khan's grandson became the Yuan dynasty, became the emperor of China. But so the Mongols became Chinese. Chinese conquered them by the culture, not by fighting them.
And it had to be divine intervention.
That's right.
When you consider how many times it's been taken over, the fact that you have a culture, that you have an identity, that you've been able to not be erased and reinvented.
But that's because, in a way, present-day China is paranoid. They fear Western.
Well, I can't imagine why.
Yeah, Western
civilization.
That's a civilization and the power. Okay, the Chinese, for instance, another thing that made China a huge country was the Manchus from northeast. And at one time, the Vladivostok was part of China. It's called Haishan Wei. and now it's Russia. And all the Western powers came in to got concessions. The areas, Tom's family came from the French concession. My family stayed in the British concession, which is, it's called the international concession, where these are in the major cities that they, the foreign laws prevailed. So
The language?
the Chinese are paranoid, and I think all this dispute in this South China Sea, also they react because they're afraid of Westerners,
And they have good reason.
but I think most Chinese feel they rather obey than obey the government, cultivate harmony and trade rather than fight, because they've known so much war. And this one war is worse than 100 years of.
But surprisingly enough, there are more people in China than us Westerners have.
Yes.
That always amazed me, that they are in numbers and in body count. There are so much, but they're not aggressive.
Yeah, in the 14th century, 15th centuries, the Chinese were very prosperous, and they were the largest trading area. And when people are prosperous, what do? They procreate. And the population grew and grew, By the 19th century, just when the Westerners came, the Chinese were overpopulated, and they devastate, they cut down trees for use for energy, and the Chinese became smug. We're the best. The Westerners came to want to trade, and the Chinese said, we don't need your stuff. The English came with their wool, and Chinese said, in the old days, the wool was rough.
Itchy.
Was rough. We have silk. Why do we want your
We
wool?
wanted your silk.
Yeah, and the Westerners cultivated a taste for silk, for porcelain. Blue and white Delftware was a copy of Chinese blue and white, and you see George Washington wearing a vest, and it's silk. It's very. In the old days, the technology for silk making is probably like high-tech stuff. And Chinese invented printing and invented gunpowder, but they used the gunpowder to make firecrackers. So today, China is still the most sophisticated fire. I think we buy all our firecrackers from China. And they didn't think about, when the Westerners came with their gyroscope, they said, that's a toy. They talked about giving them a car and a train, and the Chinese said, oh, that's so noisy. We have palanquins carrying us. It's soft and slow and easy. They have the Chinese became very smug and stopped learning from other people. And of course, they soon, the Westerners came with their guns and forced them to buy opium, which the Chinese the population wanted it, because and then the Japanese came and cultivated opium in the northern provinces they occupy and flooded China with opium, so that if you're tired, you take some opium instead of aspirin, which is cheap.
If you had worked so hard to get to where you could be smug, when you don't have something to work for, you're bored.
Yes.
And that's when the drugs and the opium and all that comes in, when they're that same stimulation that you had in pride in your work and pride in building something if you've built it all and you're not working anymore, yeah, you're going to be bored.
Right. But now, after a whole 100 years of devastation from war, the Chinese work very hard. And I heard one Chinese said that, the difference between us and the West now is that we work 12 hours and they work 8.
And you don't get 3 coffee breaks.
Yeah.
Would you like to read for our audience a passage from the book?
Okay.
So they can get a taste of your excellent writing?
Thank you so very much.
We'll be back in a moment. Thank you.
Back in July 1941, a steady breeze blew me from Hong Kong to the United States on an ocean liner. Certain of Miss Tyler's connections and my family's support, I felt no fear, but I was not prepared for the dislocation. I was wide-eyed with wonder. The open spaces felt daunting and overwhelming. Even in populated neighborhoods, there were so many open areas with no walls separating them. I had difficulty grappling with the new social norms and mores. Men and women talked openly in the public, often kissing or hugging each other in greeting. Students walked hand in hand on campus, and no adult admonished them. No one even paid attention. I was curious about everything, but I remained a mute observer. Soon I was swept into a bewildering forest of Western art, music, American literature, and history. Math and science courses carry no cultural baggage, and I studied them like old friends. The English I had learned in the French convent school in Hong Kong was more than sufficient for me to handle classwork, but I was not used to speaking up in class. At first, people were solicitous, but when I did not respond quickly enough, some would raise their voices as if I were old and hard of hearing or had trouble with the language. I loved Robert Frost, but couldn't understand the strength he drew from a nature that was wild and cultivated. Often feeling homesick, I found it hard to love literature that glorified the untamed open spaces and the solitude, though I thought Mother would love Emily Dickinson. Among my struggles with the overwhelming dissonance I felt, I had to deal with male attention. Syracuse University was proud to be the first co-ed university in the country. Soon after I arrived, Steve Russell took an interest in me. He was red-headed history major, flat-footed and therefore exempt from the draft. He wanted to learn Chinese. He spoke softly. We had a riotous time laughing over transliteration of Chinese names. I said, do you know that Steve could be translated as Silk Buddha, Time Flourishing, or Death Flourishing? No contest, he replied. Call me Silk Buddha. He invited me for Thanksgiving. Initially, I was shy and could not find my voice when I was introduced to his family. His father addressed me. Hope you like eat turkey? I froze. She speaks perfect English with a British accent, Dad, Steve interrupted. Steve's father did not apologize, but scrutinized me as if I were a creature from outer space. Where's your family, dear? Steve's mother asked sweetly. My family's in Hong Kong, I mumbled. Everyone nodded. Then the usual series of questions followed about my father's occupation and how long I had been in the country. I answered everything as simply as I could, mentioning how we had fled the encroaching Japanese invasion, leaving our home in Hangzhou, and then going for the safety of this foreign concession in Shanghai, and then due to my father's patriotic activities to the British colony. No one asked what the foreign concession meant, and didn't even want to know what to say about our family odyssey. Instead, the parents stared and praised my remarkable British accent and other attributes. Steve mentioned that the Manchus, not the majority Han people, were the last imperial Chinese government until the Westerners came to trade, wage war, and take territories, all the major Chinese cities. I added that our family lived in a concession on Peitan Road, named after the French general, Steve's father asked. I nodded. As we sat down to dinner, Steve's mother announced sweetly, "We have extra side dishes, just in case Vicky misses Chinese food." She proudly produced a plate of gooey rice and fried meat they had ordered from the local restaurant. Afterwards, Steve told me his parents liked me. I knew they meant to be kind, but I couldn't help but feel disappointed that they were so unlike Miss Tyler's circle of mostly missionary friends who were much more knowledgeable about Chinese culture. I blamed myself for being embarrassed. After this one attachment, I concentrated on my studies and rebuffed all male attention, especially when they wanted to invite me somewhere private to study.
Thank you. That's a little bit long, but it encompasses everything cultural, shocking, respectful, the things that you would never say out loud in mixed company.
Yes.
You tie it all together very well and makes me feel that my education regarding the country is awry.
Yes.
And I have to try harder. So I think I'll go get the other two books
Thank you.
and read them and see if I can learn some more from your excellent doing of Under the Red Moon. Thank you very much for bringing it to us.
Thank
and come
you.
again when you finish the next one.
Thank you.
That's it for today. Off the Shelf. Books on Tour. Have a good one. Bye.